The thing that gets me, Stephen, is that here was Albo on election night claiming he will unite the country, yet all we've seen from this Labor government is an agenda that will divide us. Am I being fair or cynical here, mate?
Absolutely. No, I think you're being 100% right, and that's my argument about creating two classes of Australian. If the concept of reconciliation and closing the gap and all these other buzz terms that we hear is about bringing Indigenous Australians and European Australians together, well, you don't do that by separating them and telling them that they have two different qualities of voice when it comes to how we act with our politicians and our voice to the parliament, which is supposed to represent all of us.
Well, just moving to something I saw today, which is going to stun our viewers. It's an advertising campaign by the Queensland government. It called on interstate tradies to move to Queensland to work which would cost the taxpayer $1.9 million. That's the advertising campaign. You heard that right. $2 million for an advertising campaign. Now, Stephen, tell me, how many tradies do you think this Tradies in Paradise scheme attracted?
Well, I'm guessing probably close to none, but they've got to fill up that well camp facility somehow, don't they?
Well, you're more cynical than me now, Stephen. Well, actually, look, it did work, but all it attracted was two tradies. Two tradies under the scheme after 12 applications and 870 expressions of interest. God knows what happened to the other 868. But anyway, Stephen, will Queenslanders...
I hope they were both plumbers.
Will Queenslanders wake up to Anastasia Palaszczuk's tired old government, do you think?
Yeah, look, I think finally, particularly with David Crisafulli as the opposition leader in Queensland, the coalition's starting to make some ground there. Or sorry, when I say the coalition, the LNP in Queensland. Crisafulli seems like a fairly straight shooter and a straight up and down bloke, and I think he's getting some cut through. And look, I mean, there's no question that this Palaszczuk government is stale, and you'd like to think Queenslanders would wake up to it sooner rather than later. I mean, how many scandals can you go through and how much stench of corruption can you cop before you decide to give somebody that looks like a straight shooter a go?
Well, let's move from Queensland to Tasmania. I raised this on my show last night, but what about the Hobart Council's woke plans to remove the statue of Tasmania's 15th Premier, William Crowther, from Franklin Square? What do you make of that one?
I mean, it's just, look, what it really highlights is, and it's a problem we've got here in the ACT, is that when you elect parliaments via the Duckworth-Lewis system, sorry, the Hare-Clark system, they insist that I call it, when you've got parliaments of only 25 people, of semi-professional politicians who get elected with a handful of votes, you're going to come up with this rubbish. I mean, the erasure of history is extraordinary, particularly when you think of the context of this voice to parliament that we're talking about at the moment, where people are talking about truth-telling. Well, surely truth-telling includes all of history, not just the bits that you like.
I raised this last night. How can you live in a free society and hate it at the same time? It doesn't make sense, Stephen. But look, get this: the removal of this sculpture, this statue, will cost around 20 grand. But there are also plans to move it elsewhere. So what's the point?
Look, well, I mean, as most things that come out of Tasmania, I don't think there is much point. Lovely place to go and visit, but I feel sorry for my friends that live down there.
This bronze statue was erected in 1889, so just leave it there for goodness sake. Now, Stephen, with all this rainfall, can't we just go back to the good old days when councils worried about potholes?
Don't get me started on potholes, Fred. We've got a council here in Canberra that just ignores them altogether. And luckily, I have a sponsor that gives me a car, so I don't have to worry about repairs to the rims, but average Canberrans do.